The arrival at dawn. The sky was still dark when the sensors on Outpost 17 started to beep. It was just before sunrise on the edge of Sector D, far away from any main city. The desert wind was cold and sharp. A lone human guard leaned on the gate, wall yawning. He didn't expect anything. Nothing ever came this far. Until today, a faint figure slowly appeared from the horizon, small, shaking and wrapped in worn-out cloth. As she came closer, two tiny figures walked beside her. Children. The guard stood up straight. What the? The woman was not human. She had pale blue skin, long white hair full of dust and glowing violet eyes filled with pain. Her robes were torn. One of the children limped, the other clung to her arm. They looked weak, starving, lost. The alien woman raised her hand and spoke, in broken English. Please help. My children, why we have no food, why no home. The guard hesitated. Wait here, don't move. Inside the outpost, Jack was already awake, working in the engine room. He lived alone in the back quarters, quiet, away from everyone, a mechanic by job, a ghost by soul. A voice called him over the intercom. Jack, you better get to the front gate. Something weird's going on. He arrived a few minutes later, wiping grease off his hands. When he saw her, everything stopped. She was standing in the cold sand barefoot, holding both her children. One child had bruises on his face. The girl looked like she hadn't eaten in days. The woman's eyes met Jack's and something in them grabbed him, not fear, not pride, just desperation. She stepped forward and fell to her knees. Please, she said again, looking only at him now. You, man, take us. The guards around Jack raised their eyebrows. One laughed. Did she just ask you to take her? She's probably trying to scam her way in. Another muttered. Alien widows pull this stunt all the time. But Jack didn't move. The kids looked at him with big tired eyes like they were too scared to cry. He bent down slowly. What's your name? The woman pointed to herself. Nara. Then she touched the kids gently. My babies. Jack glanced at the guards. They sick? The woman nodded fast. No medicine, no food, 3 days walking. Jack turned to the commanding officer. Let them in. The officer shook his head. Protocol says no entry without ID or sponsor. She's an alien refugee, could be lying. Jack clenched his jaw. He looked at Nara again. She didn't speak. She just bowed her head and whispered, please. Something in Jack broke. Maybe it was the way she held the kids. Maybe it was how quiet she was. No drama, no begging, just silence and surrender. I'll take responsibility, Jack said firmly. The officer frowned. You serious? Jack nodded. Yeah, I'll vouch for them. They stay with me. The gate opened. Jack helped Nara to her feet. She winced. Her legs were weak. The little boy tried to walk but fell. Jack picked him up without thinking. The girl held her mother's hand tight. He led them into his small unit at the back of the outpost. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a workshop. But it was warm, safe. He gave them food, plain protein bars and hot water. The children ate slowly, like they didn't want to waste a single crumb. Nara sat near the wall, watching, quietly. Jack noticed her eyes scanning the room, not greedily, carefully, like she was still unsure this was real. You can sleep here, Jack said. I'll fix the heater. Nara looked at him. Why? Jack didn't answer at first. He just shrugged. I don't know. You looked like you needed help. Nara lowered her head again. Thank you, Jack. He was surprised. How do you know my name? She pointed at his badge. He smiled for the first time in months. That night, after putting some extra blankets, on the floor Jack lay awake. He heard the soft breathing of the children. Then a quiet whisper. Thank you. It was Nara, her voice from the corner. Jack closed his eyes. He didn't know what he had started, but he knew this. The cold, empty room finally felt a little warmer. A broken family meets a broken man. The next morning came with silence. Not the peaceful kind. This was the heavy silence of strangers under one roof. Jack stood in his small kitchen, staring at the old kettle as it hissed over the stove. He hadn't made breakfast for anyone in years. He barely made it for himself. But today, 3 guests were sleeping in the next room, an alien widow and her 2 half-starved kids. And he didn't know what he was doing. From the corner he heard a soft cough. Nara stepped out quietly, holding her little boy's hand. She wore one of Jack's old shirts. It hung loose on her thin body. The girl followed close behind, clutching a ragged blanket Jack had left out. They looked cleaner now, warmer, but still afraid, like they didn't believe they were safe. Jack cleared his throat. "Water's hot. You want tea?" Nara looked confused for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes. Tea, please." He poured 3 mugs and placed them on the table. The kids sat without a word. Jack tried to smile, but his face had forgotten how. "Do they speak any English?" he asked. Nara shook her head. "Just few words. My girl, Lena. Boy is Raku." Jack looked at Raku. The boy stared at his tea like it was treasure. He didn't drink, just held it to feel the warmth. Nara finally spoke again, her voice low and careful. "You saved us." Jack shrugged. "Didn't do much, just opened a door." "No," she said firmly. "You opened life." Jack fell quiet. There was something in her voice, an old pain covered in new hope. It made the air in the room feel heavy. He looked at the children again. Lena was drawing on the table with her finger. Just circles, over and over. "They okay?" he asked. Nara touched her daughter's head. They saw death many times. Jack sat down across from her. "What happened?" She didn't answer for a few seconds, then she began. "We lived in mining sector. My husband worked under the rock, explosives. One day the collapse happened, no warning, all gone, many widows. My people say, widow must marry again. Or, she is no one. I said no. I ran." Jack's jaw clenched. "And the kids? They got sick on the road. I traded what I had. Walked for days. No ship would take us. Then I heard of a human camp. They say humans still help the weak." Jack looked away. "I'm not sure they were talking about us." Nara smiled softly. "But they were. You did." The kettle whistled again. Jack turned, it off in silence. That afternoon, Jack went out to his tool shed behind the unit. His hands needed something to do, something other than shake. He found an old toy robot, rusted and broken, under a pile of scrap. He had built it years ago for someone who never got to hold it, his nephew. Gone now, just like the rest of his family. But today, he cleaned it, rewired it, painted the face. Later, he gave it to Raku. The boy's eyes lit up like twin stars. He didn't say a word, just hugged the toy close and nodded. Jack felt a strange warmth in his chest, like a fire that had been cold too long. That night at dinner, the room felt different. Lena was giggling, softly, but real. She had found Jack's screwdriver and pretended it was a space sword. Jack played along, acting scared. Nara watched from the kitchen doorway, her eyes wet with something between sadness and joy. As the kids slept, Jack and Nara sat by the window. "Why me?" he asked suddenly. "Why did you look at me that way at the gate?" Nara looked out at the stars. "You were quiet, not scared, not cruel. You looked broken, like me." Jack didn't reply. She turned to him. "Broken people can still build something together." Jack stared at her, unsure what to say. A long silence passed. Then Nara whispered, almost like a secret, "In my culture, the children choose the next father. if they feel his spirit is safe. Jack looked toward the kids, curled up with the robot, and for the first time in years, he let himself wonder, what if he wasn't alone anymore? Whispers of disapproval. The next few days passed like a fragile dream. Jack had fixed a spare heater for the kids' room. Nara helped clean and quietly cooked food with whatever rations were available. The children slowly came back to life. Lena laughed more, and Raku even followed Jack around the workshop like a little apprentice. But peace never lasts long at an outpost, not when humans start whispering, not when kindness looks like betrayal. You see him? Yeah, Jack the loner, playing house with an alien widow now. It started at the mess hall. Two soldiers at the back table laughed over their meal trays, eyes locked on Jack across the room. Heard he took her in like some sad movie. What's next, alien wedding bells? Another added, maybe she's just that good. Who knows what she's offering behind closed doors? The laughter wasn't loud, but it was enough. Jack didn't say anything. He just got up and walked out. Later that evening, Commander Rivas called him into his office. The room smelled like stale coffee and dry authority. Jack stood stiffly as the older man leaned back in his chair. Jack, Rivas said slowly, you've been a quiet soldier for years. You do your job, no problems. But this situation you've created is attracting attention. Jack crossed his arms. They needed help. I gave it. You brought undocumented aliens into a human-controlled zone. That's against protocol. I took responsibility. You took in an alien widow, Jack, with children. This isn't charity work. What if they're spies or carrying disease? Jack leaned forward. They're hungry kids, not weapons. Commander Rivas sighed. Even so, there's talk of sending them to the refugee facility at Base 14. It's safer. For everyone. Jack's jaw clenched. Safer for who? Don't make this personal. Jack didn't answer. He just turned and walked out. That night, Nara noticed something was wrong. Jack sat by the door, staring into the darkness outside, jaw tight. She came beside him, her voice soft. They don't want us here? Jack nodded once. They're afraid, or maybe just cruel. I don't know anymore. Nara sat on the floor next to him, knees pulled close. You can let us go if we make trouble for you. Jack turned sharply. Don't say that. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said. Then added quietly, you've brought more life to this place than I've seen in years. Nara looked down. In my world, when people speak against you, you have to fight not with weapons, but with truth. We stay silent. We prove them wrong. Jack sighed. Here, silence just gives them more room to lie. The next day, Jack walked with Raku and Lena to the market station. On the way, people stared. Some whispered. Others turned away. One woman, a medic, hissed under her breath. This is a military zone, not a daycare. Jack ignored her. But Lena didn't. She grabbed Jack's hand tightly, eyes wide. Later, back at the workshop, Raku handed Jack a drawing he had made. 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, 2 small, a heart drawn in red ink. Jack stared at it for a long time. He taped it to the wall. That evening, a soldier named Travis came by. He was young, loud, always looking for a fight. Jack, he said, knocking on the doorframe. Thought I'd stop by and see how your little alien family is doing. Jack didn't reply. Travis smirked. They sleeping already? Or are you giving bedtime stories in broken Xeno? Jack stepped forward, eyes hard. Leave, Travis chuckled. You really playing the husband now? What, human women too hard? For you? Jack's fists curled. But Nara appeared behind him. She stepped forward slowly, calm, but firm. She looked Travis in the eye and said, in perfect English, You speak like a child trying to sound strong, but your words are small. Travis blinked, confused. Jack smiled. Just a little. Travis stormed off, muttering. Later, as Jack fixed a pipe leak, Nara sat nearby, holding her son in her lap. You defended me, she whispered. Jack wiped his hands. You defended yourself. She smiled, tired but proud. I learn your language. For the children, For you. Jack looked at her, something unspoken rising in his chest. You don't have to change for us. I want to. If we are to stay, I must belong. Jack sat down beside her. You already do. A deal of the heart. The moon was pale and swollen over the desert sky. Jack sat alone on the metal stairs, outside his quarters staring into the silence. The stars above blinked like old wounds, things too far to reach, too deep to fix. Inside, laughter echoed softly. Lena was chasing Raku around the room. Nara had taught them a lullaby from her home world. It didn't have words, just sounds, gentle like rain falling on stone. Jack listened with his eyes closed. It didn't sound alien. It sounded like home. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep, Nara stepped outside and sat beside Jack. She didn't speak for a while, just folded her arms and looked at the stars with him. Then she said it. You need to take me as your wife. Jack blinked. He turned to her slowly, unsure if he heard correctly. What? Nara didn't look away. My people believe if a widow doesn't bond, she is cursed, weak. The children lose status. We are seen as unclean. Jack shook his head. I don't care what they say. But they do, she replied gently. And your people? They don't see us kindly either. They see shame. A woman staying in your home. Children, not your blood. Jack sighed. Who cares what? They say. Nara placed her hand on her chest. I care. For my children. For their future. Jack stood up. So what? You want me to sign a form, say we're married so people shut up, is that it? Nara stood too, calm and firm. Not for silence, for safety. This place is not safe without name, without bond, without belonging. He stared at her. You think I should marry someone I barely know? She nodded once. Yes, just like I trust someone I barely know, with everything I have left. Those words hit him like a wave. Inside, Jack paced alone after she went to sleep. Her voice kept repeating in his head. Just like I trust someone I barely know, with everything I have left. He opened a drawer and pulled out a photo frame. Dusty, cracked. A picture of his sister, her husband, their baby, all gone. He remembered the day they died, the explosion, the screams, the long silence after. He had nothing left to protect. Until now. The next morning, he took a deep breath and walked into command. Commander Rivas raised an eyebrow. Back again? Jack put a document on the table. Bonding application. Name, Jack Garrett. Partner, Nara of Yalari clan. Children, Lena and Raku. Adopted ward request. Rivas leaned back. So it's true, you're marrying the alien. Jack said nothing. Rivas sighed. You know what people are gonna say. Jack replied, they've been talking already. And you're fine raising alien kids? Jack's voice was steady. Better than leaving them to die. Rivas looked at the paper, then at Jack. You really care about them? Jack's eyes narrowed. I didn't. Fill that form out for fun. The commander stamped it without another word. That evening, Jack returned home with a box of fresh clothes. Clean, soft robes he had borrowed from a supply officer who owed him a favor. He placed them on the table in front of Nara. What's this? She asked. Wear something nice tomorrow, he said. We're going to the bonding office. Nara's eyes filled with quiet emotion. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. You say yes? Jack looked at the kids, sleeping on the floor. They already chose me, I'm just catching up. The ceremony wasn't grand. Just 2 witnesses, a translator unit, and a digital scan. But when Jack took Nara's hand and placed his thumbprint beside hers on the screen, the room felt different. Like the whole station paused. Like something ancient just happened in the middle of all this cold metal and concrete. Lena clapped. Raku held Jack's arm tightly. Nara whispered a word in her native tongue. Talmari. Jack turned. What does that mean? She smiled. It means home. Blood on the sand. It began with smoke on the horizon, thick black columns rising behind the southern dunes. By the time the first warning siren blared, the sun was already dipping low, casting long red shadows across the desert floor. Jack was under his transport rig with Raku, fixing a fuel valve. The boy was holding a flashlight steady when the alarm sounded. Jack slid out fast. He saw it, an explosion far off in the supply sector. The outpost was under attack. Raiders, not just scavengers, these were full-on desert wolves, mercs, killers, maybe even slavers. Their vehicles were fast, loud, covered in bone plates and rusted weapons. By the time Jack got Nara and the kids into his room, chaos had already reached the outer walls. Nara crouched low, eyes sharp, not panicked. Her instincts kicked in. She wasn't just a mother, she was a survivor. She turned to Jack. They will break through the west wall. It is weakest. You must take the children. Hide them in the water tanks. Jack blinked. How do you know that? Nara didn't answer. She pulled a strange device from her satchel. Metal rods folded into a sphere, glowing faint blue. Jack frowned. What is that? A gift from my husband, before he died. She looked him dead in the eye. Take the kids. Now. Outside, explosions shook the ground. Shouts echoed. Plasma rifles fired in all directions. Jack hid Raku and Lena beneath the floor hatch of the water bay. Don't move, no matter what. He looked at Lena. You're strong, right? She nodded, biting her lip. Raku whispered, Come back. Jack closed the hatch. He ran back to the front line, just in time to see Nara leap from the wall. Yes, leap. Her body moved with impossible speed. She landed between two raiders and slammed her blue glowing device into the ground. A shockwave burst out. Short-range EMP. Their guns fizzed out. Before they could recover, Nara had grabbed one of their rifles, flipped it backwards, and struck one man across the helmet. Another lunged at her. She ducked and kicked him in the throat. Fast, precise, brutal. Jack watched, stunned. She wasn't just surviving. She was trained. Commander Rivas saw it too. Who the hell is she? Jack stepped beside him. She's my wife. Rivas blinked. She's what? But before he could argue, the west gate collapsed. Raiders rushed in. Jack didn't wait. He grabbed a pulse rifle and joined the fight. Side by side with Nara, they pushed back wave after wave. Dust filled the air. Explosions shook the walls. And still, she fought like a storm. Hours passed, smoke cleared, the raiders retreated, bodies left behind, wounded carried off. The base was scarred but standing. Inside the medical bay, Jack sat beside Nara as a medic scanned her arm. She had a burn near her shoulder. You're not just a miner's widow, Jack finally said. Nara looked at him, tired but unashamed. No, I was a shield maiden before I became a wife. Jack chuckled softly. Should have told me. You never asked. They both laughed. Then the room's door slammed open. Two officers and Commander Rivas walked in. Rivas's face was stiff. You disobeyed direct evacuation orders. You used alien tech inside a human facility. You put others at risk. Jack stood. She saved the outpost. She could have killed everyone if that device malfunctioned. Jack stepped forward. She saved children, soldiers, me. Rivas turned to Nara. You are not authorized to use weapons. You're a civilian. I am a mother, she said. I did what I had to. The officer beside Rivas muttered. She acted like a soldier. Without permission. Then Rivas said, the words that made Jack's blood freeze. She'll be taken into custody until we figure out what to do with her. Jack's voice cracked like thunder. No, she's not going anywhere. Rivas raised an eyebrow. You gonna stop us, Jack? Jack stood taller than he had in years. If saving this outpost makes her guilty, Then I'll be guilty with her. They stared each other down. Then, Rivas gave a long sigh. You're lucky this place is still standing. He looked at Nara. You're bonded to a human now. That buys you time. But next time, ask for permission before becoming a hero. He walked out. Later that night, Jack sat on the roof. Nara joined him, her arm bandaged. She looked up at the stars. You didn't have to speak for me. Jack leaned back. You didn't have to fight for all of us. She smiled. Maybe we both did what we had to. He nodded. You're not just my wife now. You're my partner. She placed her head on his shoulder just for a moment. In the silence that followed, they didn't speak of war or fear or what came next. They just sat there, a broken man and a forgotten widow, who had both bled for something they didn't know they were still capable of. Hope. Stand before the court. 3 days after the attack, the outpost felt colder, not because of the wind, because of the silence. Nara hadn't left her room since the fight. Jack knew something was wrong. Her face was calm, but her body still quiet, guarded. She tucked the children into bed each night without a word. She smiled, but it was a smile stretched over fear. Then the message came. Subject: Nara of Yalari. You are hereby summoned to appear before the Sector Tribunal for unauthorized combat, use of restricted alien tech, and violation of refugee conduct. Jack crushed the paper in his fist. Nonsense, he muttered, but in the human military system, nonsense still had power. The next morning, Jack walked into the tribunal chamber, boots echoing loud in the steel hall. A row of officers sat behind. A long table, tablets glowing with data. A camera floated in the corner, recording everything. Nara stood at the center, hands folded. She wasn't shackled, but the pressure in the room felt like chains. She looked smaller than usual. Not because she was afraid, but because she was exhausted. Jack took a seat beside her. The lead officer began. Nara of Yalari, widow of Sector X-12, currently bonded to citizen Jack Garrett. You are accused of the following: unauthorized combat during a Class 3 raid, use of unregistered energy weapon, and failure to report military experience during refugee intake. Nara stayed silent. Jack stood. She fought because no one else could. She saved lives, children, soldiers, me. The officer didn't flinch. This isn't a discussion of heroism. This is about law. Another officer leaned forward. Did you or did you not possess knowledge of military-grade combat and technology? Nara finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Yes. I served before I became a mother. I buried that part of myself when my husband died. Then why reveal it now? Because my children were in danger. Because people I care about were under attack. Because I remembered who I used to be and who I must be again. The room fell silent. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice piped up, "Let her go." Everyone turned. It was Lena. She stood by the door, Raku beside her, both holding a drawing they had made. The same one from before. 3 figures holding hands, a heart in the middle. The guards moved to stop them, but Jack raised a hand. Let them speak. The lead officer frowned. This isn't a public forum. Jack's voice rose. Then maybe that's the problem. He stepped forward. You call this justice, but you ignore truth. You ask for paperwork while bombs fall. You want obedience, not integrity. He pointed to the children. They're not soldiers, they're not threats, they're just kids who watched their mother save a base full of strangers. And now you want to punish her for surviving? No one spoke. Jack continued, voice sharp. I've seen men with badges and weapons do nothing when it mattered. I've seen cowards wear uniforms and heroes wear nothing but bruises and scars. So if you want to lock someone up for doing the right thing, start with me. He stood beside Nara. The room stayed frozen for several long seconds. Then Commander Rivas stood up slowly. He looked at the officers. You have your evidence. You have your words. But I saw what she did that day, and I say this tribunal ends here. A murmur ran through the room. She risked her life when others ran. She deserves a medal, not a trial. The lead officer exhaled, long and slow. Very well. Charges dropped. Case dismissed. Outside, the wind had picked up. But inside Jack's heart, it was calm. He walked out with Nara and the kids by his side. Nara didn't say anything for a while. Then she whispered, "You stood with me." Jack looked down at her. "You stood for everyone. Someone had to stand for you." Lena tugged Jack's hand. "Are you and Mama going to stay with us forever now?" Jack smiled. Longer than that. That night they didn't sleep apart. Nara didn't sit across the room. She sat beside him on the old sofa, under the same blanket, both listening to the quiet hum of a bass finally at peace. "I thought I had lost everything," she said softly. Jack rested his hand on hers. "Turns out we both found something. Wife, mother, and something more. The desert blooms once every few years. No one expects it. It doesn't ask for attention. But after enough rain and enough pain, flowers rise from the dust." That morning, Outpost 17 felt like it bloomed. Not because the sun was brighter, because of what the people finally saw. It started with a rumor, one that spread like wind. The alien widow and the human mechanic, they're being honored. Most laughed at first, but when Commander Rivas himself ordered a full assembly, the base fell silent. Soldiers gathered in the main yard. Engineers stood with oil still on their hands. Even the medics came, standing shoulder to shoulder, curious and unsure. In the middle of the crowd stood Nara, clean robe, hair braided, violet eyes calm. Beside her, Jack, shirt tucked, boots polished, expression serious. Lena held one of his hands. Raku clutched the other. The family looked out of place in the center of a military outpost, but they didn't look weak. They looked complete. Commander Rivas stepped forward. He wasn't a man of speeches, but today, he made one. "A week ago, we were attacked. A group of raiders nearly breached our defenses. A disaster was avoided not by our systems, but by two people who had every reason to run and no reason to care." He looked at Jack, a man who gave shelter when no one else would, who fought, not because of orders but because of heart. He looked at Nara, a woman who stood between death and dozens of soldiers, a mother, a fighter, a survivor. Then he raised a small metal box and opened it. Inside were two medals, one silver, one glowing softly with alien crystal embedded in it. He handed the silver one to Jack, the glowing one to Nara. Outpost 17 owes its survival not to force, but to family. The crowd didn't cheer, not right away, but slowly hands began to clap, first a few, then many, then all. Later, in the quiet of their room, Jack placed the medal on the wall next to Raku's drawing, the one with the heart in the middle. Nara stood behind him, arms wrapped around her children. For the first time, no shadow hung in the air, no threat, no judgment, just peace. That night, Nara sat outside on the metal stairs again, just like the first time. Jack joined her with 2 cups of tea. They didn't speak for a while. Then Nara turned and said softly, "Do you know what they called me before?" Jack sipped his tea. "No. Yalari no soul. It means a woman without a name, without a bond, without protection." He looked at her. "You're not that anymore." She nodded. "No, I'm Nara Garrett now." She looked at him with something deep in her gaze. "And not just because of a document." Jack smiled. "Same." She raised an eyebrow. "You were a no-soul too?" "Something like that." Lena poked her head out the door. "Mama, can we sleep in your bed tonight?" Jack laughed. "What happened to the big brave girl who sleeps alone?" Lena giggled. "The brave girl wants a story." Nara stood up and held out her hand. "Then the brave girl will get one." As they walked back inside, Jack paused at the door. He looked back out at the stars. For years he had stared at them and felt nothing but distance. Tonight, they felt warm. Weeks passed. The people at the base began to change too. The guards who once whispered began waving at the kids. The medic who once glared at Nara offered her dried herbs for her arm. Even Travis, the loudmouth soldier, nodded when he passed Jack. They didn't say sorry, but sometimes change speaks in silence. One evening, Jack found Nara in the workshop, helping Raku build a small drone. He leaned on the door. "You're becoming quite the engineer," she smirked. "Well, I did marry one." Jack walked over and kissed her forehead. "Guess I'm rubbing off on you." She looked up at him. "And you on me." They stared at each other for a beat. Too long. Then Jack whispered, "Do you think we're strange?" "For what? For building a family from ashes?" Nara shook her head. "No. I think we're proof." "Proof of what?" "That broken things don't stay broken, if someone believes they're worth fixing." As the sun set that night, casting gold across the sand and steel, the mechanic and the widow sat with their children on the roof of the outpost, not to escape, not to dream, but simply to be together.